Welcome to the Volunteer Global video blog. Today, we'll answer the question about why you're asked to pay a fee to sign up for a volunteer abroad trip. Your first instinct is probably to think it's a ripoff to pay to volunteer. You're giving your time to help with the program, so why give them money too? Before we get started with the cost breakdown, I want to emphasize one very important point. You're not paying to volunteer. The actual work you're doing is good enough, and believe me, a reputable host group wouldn't ask for volunteers if it didn't find you invaluable. That said, there are costs incurred in a volunteer abroad program. A great number of them only receive funding from their travelers themselves. Host groups often are local, community-based, and volunteer-operated initiatives that don't usually have grants or large donations at their disposal, so they need to ask volunteers and visitors for program fees to help cover their operation costs. Let's go over a quick breakdown on where exactly your payment goes. As with any vacation, you'll need a place to stay. On a volunteer vacation, you'll stay with a host family, in a shared volunteer house, in a hostel, or in a hotel depending on the trip you sign up for. And for host families, this might actually be the only form of income they receive. Volunteer vacation programs almost always include your meals, laundry, and other amenities as part of the package. And many of them grow their own food locally and then prepare and serve all of your meals throughout your trip. Most volunteer abroad groups provide airport pickup and drop-off for you and might drive you to and from the project site if it's a bit further away from where you're being housed. So this helps to cover gas or vehicle repair if it's needed. For a personal example of this, I volunteered in Honduras last summer, and unfortunately the van our group used got a flat tire the day they picked me up from the airport. So my program fee was used to get a new tire, which allowed for safe transport on our part as well as for future volunteer groups. Your fee will also help buy tools for your project. Like if you're on a construction project, you probably won't need to bring your own hammer and nails, since they're already provided by your host group. As well, a good number of volunteer abroad programs include community outreach and education as part of their mission, so your project fee might cover things like rental in a community classroom or an educational booth at a local festival. And finally, your payment helps with the volunteer program staying up and running. Again, most of these groups' only form of income is from volunteer donations. So you're helping to keep volunteers safe with in-country staff who can help and train those who work on the projects, as well as to provide some income for the locals who assist with the group. And to wrap up today's post, I wanted to go over the difference between placement and host groups. If you've done a quick Google search for volunteer abroad programs, you might have seen some of the same ones pop up over and over, like Eye to Eye, Cross-Cultural Solutions, and Global Volunteer Network. You might not have seen others like the Cloud Forest School, Fabretto Children's Foundation, or the Gibbon Conservation Center. That's because the first group mentioned are placement organizations, which usually have a larger marketing and recruiting budget and that work in a number of countries with a large variety of projects. For example, Cross-Cultural Solutions works in 12 countries worldwide with multiple projects in each. The second group I mentioned consists of host groups, which are smaller, locally run programs that accept volunteers to work directly with them, rather than placing volunteers with partners. So you'll find that host groups will often partner with placement groups to recruit more volunteers for their programs. If you Google volunteering in Ghana, then click on Cross-Cultural Solutions, you'll see they have a number of programs in the country ranging from healthcare to teaching to childcare to community development. Through these programs, Cross-Cultural Solutions has partnered with local groups that need volunteers. And just as an aside, this organization in particular does have local staff on the ground, so you will work with Cross-Cultural Solutions, but on a project that's started and championed locally. That said, you'll find that volunteering through a host group is often less expensive than volunteering through a placement group. This is because placement groups usually provide a bit more preparation and interaction with their volunteers before and after service. For example, they might do an application interview, give you a volunteer handbook, provide US-based staff support, if they're in the US that is, and keep you updated with newsletters, social networking, and even with local events. Host groups, on the other hand, often operate on a more shoestring budget, with all of their financial and staff resources going directly to their project and their host community. Which one you choose to go with depends on your own interests and needs. My first volunteer trips were through placement programs, since I didn't have much travel experience outside of the US. So I preferred the extra layer of support. After a while, I moved on to working directly with host groups since I felt fine handling my own itinerary, navigating around my host country on my own, and really just doing the solo travel thing. So that's my crash course on why you're asked to pay to volunteer abroad. Remember, you're not paying to volunteer, but you are paying for support both for yourself and for the community you'll work in. And of course, if you have any concerns or questions, go ahead and ask your volunteer group. They'll be happy to help you out, and they for sure would rather you ask than to be uncertain. If you'd like to learn more about volunteering abroad, connect with Volunteer Global on Facebook and Twitter, or visit us at volunteerglobal.com.